to this special edition of the RaspberrySky Straight Talking. I am delighted to introduce you to Benjamin Calleja, the founder and Chief Experience Officer of Livit, the global experts in guest experience and design. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you very much, Sally.
Sorry for the slip up on your surname.
No worries, nobody gets it right. You're not the only one.
And it's Friday afternoon, as we said, so yeah, sorry. Anyway, thank you very much for giving up your time to talk to me today. I first came across Livit earlier this year, actually, when a friend of mine shared your keynote from the Restaurant Spaces conference. And I have to say, I've been in the travel hospitality space for years, but I was totally blown away about that keynote speech. And I have to say, I've been shamelessly quoting Livit in recent webinars and interviews when anybody has asked me about anything that I've seen that's been particularly innovative. So I've become your super fan in the last sort of 3 months, really. So I'm really, really excited to speak to you. So for those people who haven't heard of Livit, could you just give us a quick overview of the company?
Yeah, absolutely, Sally. And first of all, thanks for having me and for your kind words. So Livit is currently the world's largest restaurant design company. But as you say, it's a rare breed because we're a strange company. We do everything from strategy to operations to design to touch points. So we're a company where we have kitchen designers and DJs on staff to really make sure that we capture the whole customer journey, the whole experience. And our job is really to make brands scalable and profitable.
Amazing. Yeah, and we'll get into more detail of your specific brands in a moment. But I'm also really interested to understand a bit more about you. And what makes you who you are and where your motivation comes from, and perhaps what's really important to you.
Yeah, well, I think I'm a creative soul. I'm an architect by trade, although I don't design as much anymore. I spend most of my time on planes. So for those of you who are new, we're in 50 countries and we open a restaurant every 8 hours somewhere in the world.
Wow.
So there is a lot of travel, but that's the beauty of it. You meet a lot of people. You know, going back to what motivates me, I love being on the road and meeting interesting people. And I think it's essential. If you want to drive this industry and push innovation, it's very important to understand what is happening in China, what is happening in the US, what's happening all over the world. Because what we try to do is have a little bit of a crystal ball. What we create for today, you know, it's not for today, it's for 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. So in terms of motivation, what really gets me going is push this industry, do things differently, you know, motivates and push our own clients to do things different and things outside this box. I think this industry really needs a lot of that. It's an old school industry. Interestingly enough, I think during the last 10, 11 months through COVID, we've seen more innovation than in the last 10 years. It's been really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just talk about your two restaurant concepts. So you have V and 1889 Pizza.
Yep.
I love the concept when you talked about it on your keynote, when you sort of said, when you asked kind of customers what they were looking for, they kind of said the Soho house without the membership. But also balanced with the operator, drivers of, efficiency, labor and technology. Tell us more about those concepts and the commercial model around those, because I think they're really unique.
Yeah, so, we've designed somewhere between 13,000 and 14,000 restaurants by now. So what we really thought is, can we prove ourselves that you could do things even more differently and push the industry? And it's hard when you have a global client. It's very hard to push this kind of innovation. So we said, you know what, we're going to do it ourselves. And what we wanted to do it is in very tough environments. So we actually chose to open what we call them restaurant labs, because it's really an environment that for guests, they think it's a regular restaurant, but they're packed with sensors and we try everything really. and we don't have to ask for permission, right? We just ask for forgiveness.
I like the approach.
Yeah, so the whole idea is we opened one in Stockholm and one in Los Angeles, right? Which are high labor markets, specifically Sweden, where it's one of the highest labor markets in the world, because we strongly believe that innovation in efficiency is the future of this industry. As labor costs go up, as skilled labor is more scarce, we really wanted to create something where we can prove that restaurants could be run efficiently and feel like a Soho House, but be run like a QSR. So that was kind of the issue. Can we take this extreme operational efficiency, where we're doing 5 to 7 guests per labor hour, which is astonishing, but put it in a fine dining environment where people really want to hang out and post and have cool drinks and really become that neighborhood community hub. And nobody had ever done it. And we didn't know if it's going to work or not, but we decided to try it at least.
Yeah. And the V restaurant, I kind of picked up when I guess listened to your keynote again, with the V being around the 5 senses, and you really play to that. Yeah. So can you just explain that a bit?
Yeah. So I really believe in the strong emotions you can connect with, the emotional connection you can create through senses. So the whole idea of V is the Roman numeral 5, and therefore we play on the 5 senses. So not only we create our own scents, we can actually change the scent in real time, and depending on what scent we use, consumers behave differently and actually order different food products, which is really interesting in how you can scent to drive revenue. We have a partnership with Spotify, with the business division, where we test music and utilize different music to have different consumer behavior, depending on we're on peak or non-peak, or you want to drive average ticket or throughput. So everything we do is really about all the 5 senses. And once you get it right, it's extremely interesting, not only from that emotional connection you create with guests, but how you can actually trickle that down to profitability.
Yeah. And you were saying, I think, as well, that yes, you said around the scent, the smell in the restaurant at the time, but also the music makes people buy different products.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of research. We were a very research or data-driven company. So we did a huge approach to music and really wanted to understand what it really does to bottom line. So we've actually tested playing popular music, for example, which is not bad music. You just what you hear on the radio, right? And then compare it with no music. And then what we also have started to create is brand fit music. It's brand that is linked to your core values as a brand. And what we experienced is in changing from just popular music to fully brand fit music, sales could go up 9.1%. And we did this across 25 restaurants with another 25 restaurants on benchmark. So it's a really professional study. We didn't do it, we outsourced it to a company. And what we also learned is that depending on the type of music, if you play the A side of the single, the famous song, consumers tend to stay shorter in the restaurant than if you play the same artist, but a non-familiar song.
The B side, or
exactly. For us that have a little bit of gray hair, we know the A and the B side. But the whole idea is that when you hear a song that you get distracted from your conversation, and therefore you're more aware of time. And it's very interesting. The other thing we learned is depending on the BPM or the pitch that you play, you can also have customers to stay shorter or longer in the restaurant, and therefore have upsell opportunities. So it's a whole science around.
I was going to say it's a total science.
Both music and scent has been used for years, but just as an amenity. I need to have music, and often it's the owner's music or the general manager's music. What we try is to reuse data and insights to apply that to revenue driving initiatives.
Yeah, no, and quite often in the hotel space, quite a few brands have taken on a scent, but it's a constant scent. Do you know what I mean? They don't flex that depending on time of day, or
hotels have been using scent to make you feel at home.
Yes.
You go to an X brand and the scent, you're familiar with it, etc., etc. What we are actually doing is we're driving different scents. So for example, what we do here in Stockholm is when we use wood-fired scent, we sell much more pizzas. When we change that to fresh basil, our salad sales go up 13%. So what we have now developed is scents that are connected to Wi-Fi that we can in real time change. So within the same day, automatically they get injected into the air conditioning system, and you can try different consumer behaviors with that. It's fascinating.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable. Picking up on your point about, you know, productivity and I guess revenues, the hotel hospitality space, I guess, are being really focused on revenue management and the use of data and technology for years to sell, you know, the right product at the right time to the right customer, sort of thing. With restaurants and your pricing, I'm assuming your pricing for food is flat, in terms of, you know, a constant price and not relevant to when they've booked or when they arrive. Are you looking at the potential of revenue managing your F&B, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few tests going on, and it's a super relevant question, because I think we're all used to pay different prices for the same room, different prices for the same seat on an aircraft, but nobody pays different prices for the same food, right?
Yeah.
Which doesn't make any sense. You know, you would want to have what we call dynamic pricing, and there are some very interesting exercises in that, but normally across territories. So within a country, you can have dynamic pricing depending on, you know, average spend or disposable income or things like that. I think this industry still has to see the opportunity of dynamic pricing in restaurants. And I do believe that the off-premise industry is actually going to drive that change.
Yes.
Because on the off-premise, you don't have that knowledge about exact the price, what you pay. We're so used to scroll and find things. So it's more of the indulgence and the occasion than the actual price. Yes. So we're now working with a couple of very large operators moving into the dark kitchen virtual brand space. And there we are seeing and starting to implement dynamic pricing in real time. So basically what you connect is the throughput that you have in your kitchens and your available labor. And therefore you can play with pricing, because if you have 3 cooks in your kitchen not doing anything, you'd rather lower the prices and get higher throughput. And if you're maxed out and you cannot serve, or, you know, the time is going to be delayed, you can actually push that, throttle that orders to other times.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I think is quite interesting in the hotel hospitality side, if we want to differentiate from restaurants, is there's a kind of you know, an opportunity to completely revolutionize the concepts in the hotel. We've got a lot of dead space in hotel lobbies and restaurants that aren't particularly engaging. Do you see that this is a real opportunity for you as a business to sort of, you know, start working closer with hotels? I'm sure you are, but, you know, in some of their dead sort of cafe lobby space?
I think the hotel industry finally has realized that they're not really good at operating restaurants. They often make money on the rooms and lose money on the restaurant, and you know, they use for breakfast and then they're empty the whole day. There's an interesting shift in the industry towards reaching out to the, you know, us that work on the real world, so to say, with real rents and, you know, all the utilities paid and things like that. But a couple of things that I think is very relevant. Hotels are starting to understand that they have a lot of underutilized assets.
Yeah.
So jumping into, again, dark kitchens, virtual spaces, but also understanding that you can manage and operate your restaurants completely differently. We're actually now, Livit has been engaged by 2 very large brands, I can't say the names, to create a new hotel brand based on F&B. So basically what we create the social space, we create the cool rooftop and the pool bar and all that, and then they happen to have rooms in between. But the whole idea is, how do you create that engaging, aspirational space that is an all-day neighborhood hangout?
Community time,
whether it has rooms on top or not, it's relevant. I was speaking to a global brand the other day, and I was saying, why do you put the huge sign of your hotel on front of the entrance?
But no restaurant.
It's not that you're walking down the street and say, oh, look, a hotel, I'm going to jump in. Right?
Yeah.
You know, the hotel is already a destination. You already book. Why don't you promote your social spaces and open that up to the locals? Because that's really actually the keynote I did yesterday in Madrid in this conference that I mentioned before we're jumping on the call was about the future of social spaces in hotels. There's a huge, massive opportunity for this.
Yeah. And are there really fundamental differences for applying your model to a hotel restaurant versus a standalone restaurant? Are there complexities there?
No, actually, I think there are advantages because a lot of hoteliers are now suffering from having, you know, Uber Eats guys and delivery runners in their corridors and empty kitchens. With our model where we have a ticket time of under 5 minutes, we beat those guys, right? So if you're sitting at what you don't want as a customer nowadays is spending, you know, $25 and waiting 35 minutes for a club sandwich on a hotel room. It's not happening.
No, that's so true.
Are wiser than that. But with our model, you can get an excellent service in less than 5 minutes from the restaurant downstairs where food is hot and reach you faster. The other kind of point of innovation and that differentiates the high street from a hotel operation is breakfast. With the whole challenge of buffets, and all hotels have similar challenges. If you build a really good buffet, you're going to throw away a lot of food. And if you just put the buffet, what you're going to eat, where your customers are going to use, it's perceived as sparse. So we actually we're actually opening now a V restaurant in a hotel in Dubai later this year. And the whole idea is how can we apply the service model that we have in the efficiency into the breakfast. So you can actually order a la carte, which gives a higher value perception for the same breakfast price that you have, but get your food in less than 4 minutes. That's going to be revolutionary.
Absolutely, because that buffet concept is a real legacy one, really, isn't it? And as you said, the amount of waste that, you know, that the hotel.
Not to mention COVID, right?
Yes.
That's a whole nother game.
Which is a nice segue to my next question, actually. So with the COVID pandemic and the massive impact it's had on the hospitality sector, what are you doing to work with your clients to help them be more efficient and more engaging? Are there new initiatives that you're bringing out to help restaurants transition back into business?
Yeah, a lot. I think, you know, interestingly enough, this year has been the busiest year ever for us.
Yeah, I bet.
Because we're known for innovation and for disruption. And suddenly in April, everyone needed to change their model. Everyone needed to digitalize. Everyone needed to be more efficient. So I have to say, and it's hard to say, it's been a great year for us. So whenever there is change in the industry, people are forced to think differently. And that's a great opportunity for disruption and innovation. So what is very interesting is that brands we work with that were already prepared for off-premise, where we had digitalized, they are doing double digits year-on-year sales improvement. So it's not a tough industry for everyone. You know, the brands that have drive-through, that have a lot of off-premise, curbside, etc., are doing really good. What we're seeing is a lot of the brands we work with, we're now doing kitchen-only units where everything's off-premise. It could be a freestanding building, but you know everything is based on drive-through, curbside, delivery drivers, etc.
Yes.
And what we're seeing on the dine-in experience is that I would say an awakening call for changing the operating model. Additionally, in restaurants, it's a very hierarchical space, right? You are a dishwasher, then you become a runner, then you become a server, then you become an assistant GM, and then a GM, right? And you don't go back. And that model, in my view, is broken. That's not working, because if you need to bring these efficiencies, you need to be cross-trained. Even if you're general managers, you need to be able to go into the back of the house, into the front of the house, and that shift of mindset is really what we're implementing. Is that is using huge impact, you know, double-digit points on the P&L in terms of just how you change your model, because then you suddenly can, on non-peak hours, run a whole restaurant with 2 or 3 team members. You don't need to have a host waiting, a dishwasher waiting, a chef waiting just for the orders to come in. So there's a lot of things going on in the industry, and I feel that this pandemic has shaped everything up, and that, you know, all bigger brands are starting to think differently.
Yeah, and I think everyone's looking at the cost model and their efficiencies and how you can digitalize and automate, and you know, and I think particularly with your labs, I think you said it on one of the the seminars is that, you had a lot of great ideas, and there was a sort of the customers were kind of like, yeah, we're not quite sure if we're ready for that. And the fact that you've gone out and said, right, let's do it ourselves and have a bit of proof of concept and show that it works really is starting to resonate with people. I think that actually it's not such a big gamble and it is possible. And, it's kind of, dangling the carrot, but actually it's a reality, And
I think as a consultant, it's normally, it's very easy to come to a client or to a brand and say, you should do this, or you should do that, and you should do that. And I understand it. It's a gamble, right?
Yeah.
It's much different to say, hey, we've done it. This works, this didn't work, and you can share, because also we're always under this thick NDAs, so we can't share with clients. But the things we do ourselves, we can share with the industry, and I think that's really very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I want to touch on, if I may, a bit about your marketing strategy. So it appears that from what you're saying, you are predominantly relying on social media to do a lot of your marketing through Instagram, and you've been really explicit about beautiful drinks, beautiful cocktails, the great food, and people posting it to Instagram. And I also love the concept of your black pizza boxes that you were explaining as well. And gosh, what an impact that has had in terms of the revenue potential. So tell me more how you came up with that approach, and do you see your marketing evolving, changing?
Yeah, I think everything we do is we say, if somebody else is doing it, then we have to do it differently. And that's the whole idea of the lab. You don't want to do things that other people are doing, so you want to do things differently. So we decided to spend zero on marketing and actually only use user-generated content. So one of the things that we've seen is that consumers trust peers, not brands. Right. So as soon as something is sponsored or, it doesn't work. So we focus all that marketing into, for example, the pizza box, right? Where 80% of guests that order the food post a picture of it online. So it's the cheapest possible marketing budget, because you're not only very exposed in social media, but you're exposed among peers, which is very relevant. And then, things that we did not expect, as, weddings ordering 200 pizzas.
I know, so unbelievable.
We've had retail brands launching collections in our pizza boxes, which is amazing, right? So that the whole thinking differently about marketing and that approach is very interesting. In Los Angeles, we focused a lot on video, and I think this is something that for the audience is interesting. There's been a trend of designing for Instagram, designing the picture wall, etc. I believe that's old news. Everything is TikTok, everything is Reels. So when you design something, make sure there's a movement. Make sure that there's dry eye smoking, or there's something happening that is well captured on video, because the spread of that is going to be exponential versus image. In social media, image is really passé already. So giving that a thought, and that actually connects to the five senses, because if you can have the music and the light and the textures and things like that connected, it's even more powerful.
Yeah, it's I think it's quite brave, and I think a lot of the stuff that you've done is brave as well. But to sort of say, to try and launch a new brand and sort of say, well, we're not going to have any marketing spend, and it's going to be user generated, and it's quite a gamble, isn't it? And then it really sits at the heart of your ability to design really unique experiences, because if you didn't have that, people wouldn't be posting it. You wouldn't have, it's cyclical, isn't it? I mean, it's
and what's most fascinating is that we never expected to make any money on this, and we're killing it. We're making so much money. So now we're scaling. We've signed franchise deals in Belgium and in Saudi Arabia and in the US. I mean, the scalability of it is really interesting, because we actually said, let's put some money, open a couple of units, and see what happens.
Out.
And if we only learn, fair enough. We did not actually, to be fully honest, expect to have these margins that we're having, because they're not usual in the industry.
That's amazing, isn't it? I want to talk to you a bit about, we touched on it before when we talked about the hotels and the good old Uber guy, Uber Eats in the lobby delivering the pizza and things like that. So there's been a lot of hype around sort of the takeaway and the likes of the Uber Eats. What do you see coming down the line in terms of who will be disrupting the food and beverage vertical? You know, have we seen as much disruption as we think we're going to get, or do you think there's more?
There's more to come for sure. And I think the disruption and competition is most probably not coming from within the industry. It's coming from the sides. I think great example is the launch of Mr. Beast, where suddenly an influencer that is not from this industry launches a chain that has, you know, hundreds of units, right, and outlets. The whole approach to who owns the client, who owns the guest, I think it's going to be the real driver here in the years to come. It's not going to be about physical assets and footprint. It could be about something completely different. So I think as an industry, we really have to look at, you know, the sides, not only within our own industry for competition and innovation. It's like, you know, Uber to the taxis, you know.
Yes, yes.
It's a tech company that comes and disrupts the transportation industry, not another transportation competition.
Company that's already within, yeah.
That's really what we are seeing happening. And I think a great place to look for that is China.
Yes.
In terms of the type of innovation, how tech is disrupting the F&B space, how times and sourcing, and it's all, the whole value chain is changing over there. And often a lot of our clients are looking to Silicon Valley and to the US. And yes, there's some interesting things going on there. But if you really want to know what's happening in the future, look into China.
That's really interesting. But actually, so when you're looking at the franchise model and you're going now to different cultures, you talk about Dubai versus, you know, the States versus Europe, etc. Are you finding that your concept is received equally well in global cultures, or are you finding that some markets are more successful than others? I mean, do some markets, you know, not ready for this kind of concept, and others are more kind of digital and aware and the right kind of demographic?
So two things that I believe are happening in the industry, and maybe in the last 10 years. I've been at this for 20 plus years now. And what we're seeing is a constant evolution toward democratization. I mean, every millennial in the world follows the same people on social media, has the same inputs, want to have the same lifestyle. So 10 years ago, you needed to adapt much more the brands, the concepts to the local culture. But especially if you're targeting a younger audience, we're seeing that their behavior is extremely similar.
Because it's global, yeah.
In some markets, you might not have alcohol, but they still want to have the cool mocktail that, you know, makes them feel like that. So we're not seeing a lot of differences, and it's a trend that we've been following for quite some time now, a few years, and I still see it growing because I think we're all influenced by the same things constantly, and access to information is just getting easier and easier.
Easier and easier.
So it's actually on the contrary, we're seeing less changes in brands and adaptation to cultures than we were doing.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Talk to me about your measuring and tracking, because you say that you measure and track everything, and you interestingly talk about, you know, you track dwell time and value. Are you worried at all about pushback from customers who are concerned about things like data privacy, you know, and also, I guess, you know, the regulations of GDPR in the US versus Europe? Tell us a bit about the complexity of that.
Yeah, I think the key here is not linking data to a name, to a person, right? And okay. we get this question a lot. Okay, hey Ben, you're the gurus of technology and sensors and knowing all this. Can you connect that to our guests so we can send them promotions and we can do this? And I always say it's not about that. This is not about marketing. This is about understanding how you make your brand more profitable. So what we track is how many guests we have in the store in real time. If those guests have been with us before or after, how often do they come? How is that correlated to weather patterns? So we can actually do predictive analysis on sourcing of materials and on staffing. It's all those things that you can actually track to make your brand more profitable, more efficient. It's not really about knowing, hey, Sally Richards comes here every Friday and therefore that's a whole nother thing. And the beauty of that is, as long as you don't connect the data to a person, you're fully compliant with GDPR in Europe, and therefore compliant everywhere else, even in California, that is now launching a similar approach to GDPR in the US context. So I think you have to, if you are a data-driven company, you need to kind of separate the verticals of the data I want to improve my business and offer a better experience to my guest, and the data I want to market to specific individuals. Because to us, it's really about knowing, okay, are they men? Are they women? What age groups are they? At what time do they come? How much do they stay? What do they spend? How can I extract more value per minute? Which is something that I love from
Yes, it's a
listening.
completely
You do
different.
a great job of, time value extraction, right? Because that's really what it's all about. In our Stockholm restaurant, we have 115 seats, but we serve 1,000 guests. That you can only do through innovation, data-driven understanding, and shaving a minute here, 30 seconds there, etc.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because that just tips the data and intelligence on its head, doesn't it? Because I think in hospitality, we get so carried away with wanting to collect all this data and be intelligent, but the reality is we're not very intelligent with it at all anyway. Do you know what I mean? We don't do a lot with it. We have lots of silos of data sitting in the, in the hotel, but nothing bubbles up. Nothing's at the point of digital contact with the customer. You couldn't respond by saying, oh, would you like the same glass of wine, or would you like the soft drink or the mop? None of that is available at the point of touch where the customer is interacted with. It just sits in a database somewhere. When we think you might do a spa break or a cocktail evening, then we think, oh, we'll pull that out and we'll send them an email. So actually it's a really different way of looking at data, isn't it?
Yeah, and we get that a lot, Sally.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Clients that come and say, oh, we have a ton of data. And I say, okay, and what do you use it for? Well, we don't know, but we have a ton of data.
A newsletter.
Great. Great. But so what we do, and I think this is also something that I would recommend the audience, is always do use cases, right? So for example, a use case is, I want to understand how I can push throughput in my restaurant, okay? Then I need to know, first of all, how many guests do I have in the store? Okay, how do I know that? Okay, I can put somebody clicking and counting, or I can measure phones. Normally, one person has one phone. Okay, that I can track in real time, whether they're connected to Wi-Fi or not. Excellent. I have a MAC address. With a MAC address, I know how often that phone has been with us. Is it a recurring client, or is it a new client, right? And with that, then you can start building the user cases, rather than saying, okay, I have all these data. What do you use it for? So always start building the user case first. Then you identify what hardware do you need or software do you need to capture that data, because then it's much easier to really get value from the data.
Yeah, and I think as an industry, we got really carried away with this concept of, so I've got the sun coming in my face now, with a few years ago, it was all about big data. You've got to have big data. And the reality was we weren't even getting our arms around little data. We're not doing anything intelligent with the little data, let alone the big data, So I think there's a real, as an industry, we're kind of driven by this data. We want the data, but actually we're not doing anything interesting with it anyway that's going to delight the customer or make the experience any better.
I always say, a lot of people come to me and say, hey, artificial intelligence, what are you doing? You're testing this and you do. I said, yeah, artificial intelligence is pretty cool, but it's only intelligent if you give it a huge amount of data points. If you are a 50-unit restaurant chain, you're never going to get to artificial intelligence. It's actually much better to do simple if then what algorithms. So if this, then what? If this happens, then you do this. Super simple, straightforward, and actually much more accurate, because the amount of data and alpha beta testing it takes artificial intelligence to actually take actions, it's exponential to the amount of things that you can do with just if then what algorithms.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Help me understand, are there any customer types or customer demands that you believe the industry doesn't properly address, such as solo diners, for instance, people, eating alone? Is that an area that you've looked at?
That really varies by countries. For example, that's very interesting. So in hotels and in the US, it's something very important, and that has to do with how you create a customer journey for that type of occasion. So what we normally, when we create a brand, what we look into, both demographics and psychographics, it ends up being a matrix. So you have day parts and occasions. So how is my experience if I come for lunch alone? How is it if I come for lunch with the peers? Or how if I come for dinner with friends or dinner with family, right? And then you can create customer journeys and understand those moments of surprise and delight, and make sure that you don't have the pain points.
Yeah.
So what I always recommend is to do that matrix, psychographics and demographics, and then day parts and occasions, because that's a really good way of having an overview and making sure, as you say, that you're not, missing out on whoever is your core target. And on that, there's another thing that I think is very relevant and that we've seen a change over the years is don't try to be everything to everyone.
Everyone. Yeah.
Brands are becoming much more niche. Before you had Asian food, and then you had Japanese food, and then you had sushi, and now you have temaki restaurants and ramen restaurants, and that evolution, and you see it in the hotel industry as well, right? You used to have, a Marriott, and now Marriott has 15, 18 brands, right?
Yes.
So
Can't even keep up with them. Yeah.
Segment. So as an F&B experience, understand really who is your target audience and focus on them. If it's perfectly fine if you're just, kid tolerant and not kid friendly.
Yeah. You don't have to be everything to everyone. And I guess in the hotel industry, they try to be everything to everyone, don't they, generally speaking?
And it's revenue. You see, you don't want to lose it. And then you add something and then you do this promotion. And then ultimately what you end up is being beige and losing everything. So it's something, it's a pitfall that we're seeing.
And I guess you're, as you move your concepts into sort of more hotel setups, then the ability to manage that solo business traveler where, maybe it's a community tables or it's, it's trying to increase that revenue spend by instead of having tables of one everywhere, or, that there is the ability to pull those together.
The most important part for that type of traveler is making sure that the social spaces of a hotel become a community hub.
Yes.
When we travel, I take 300 planes a year. I travel a lot. I sleep more in hotel beds than I sleep in my own bed. I want to connect with the community. I don't want to sit in a boring hotel lobby with other travelers. I want to see who's there. I want to engage. I want to talk. So rather than focus, okay, do I have this type of seat? Make sure that we create something that is engaging for people that live in the community first, because travelers are going to love it.
Yes.
So I always encourage, if you're going to open a hotel, look at your neighborhood. How can you serve your community, your neighborhood? How can you become that to-go place? Because your travelers are going to love that.
Yeah. I remember staying actually quite a few years ago doing a project for a hostel concept, which I was kind of like, oh God, this isn't great. And then going there, and actually the F&B area was amazing. There's social, it was the hub of the city. It was an island, and I just thought, God, this is the happening place for this local community. Like, how cool is that? And that didn't then happen in the hotels at all.
I stayed at the Freehand in New York, a year ago. It's already through the pandemic. It was so interesting because people were staying at the Freehand because if you stayed, you could skip the line to go to right? Because everyone was online, around the block. But if you were a resident, you could have a special elevator to go to the rooftop bar. That is actually outsourced. It's not even run by the hotel. So those kind of emotional happenings, being in the know, that's a great feeling for a hotel. Because rooms are becoming a commodity. A room is a room.
Yes.
What really differentiates you, because if you just focus on the commodity, you're going to end up in a price war.
Yes.
And you're not adding value. But if you can create, engage in experiences and social hubs, that suddenly becomes something completely different that the other hotel cannot compete with.
Yeah. And it shows the spirit of the brand and the kind of the emotional connection. It is that the five senses kind of element, isn't it? And it's the place that, you really want to be. So final question, Benjamin, if I may. You've grown a fantastic business. It looks really, really exciting. Where are you going to take the business next? Where's the sort of strategy? Where are you going?
Well, I'm an innovator and I love doing new things. So I'm very curious about scaling our own concepts and labs across the world. That's kind of the next chapter, really becoming a global brand. And if I, at the same time, can push the industry, I do a lot of keynotes, I travel the world, and I try to share. Because it's not about our success. It's really, the biggest success would be if we can make a footprint in this industry and have, people think differently. That to me would really be the best outcome of my professional career, that somebody did something different and actually had an impact on the industry. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it feels to me that Livit is just is a great culture as an organization. You know, the people that I've interacted with have all been incredibly supportive, really open, and it's been really refreshing, I have to say, really, really refreshing. So
we try to do things differently. You know, I'm based in Sweden. I'm only in the office once a year. So, you know, the owner's never there. Our CEO was my trainee 15 years ago. So that culture of growing within, and there's really no limit to what you can do. And, you know, somebody that started as a trainee is our Chinese
has moved
manager.
all the way through. That's
exactly.
So cool.
That's something that we really want to
Cool.
push and promote. And I think
Yeah.
through the pandemic, the team has been amazing. The kind of effort and working from all over the world and connecting, you know, I can only take my hat off and congratulate them for the work they've done.
Well, I think it goes down to leadership as well, and just and you know, in putting, you know, building a culture that way, because it's not easy to do, and it's really great to see. So Benjamin, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. I have loads of questions, and hopefully once the pandemic is over, we can meet face to face and have a good chat, maybe in in London or something.
I would love that, Sally. Look forward to it.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Have a great one. Thanks.